If this story sent shivers down your spine, give it a thumbs up and share it with fellow horror enthusiasts. What do you think truly happened in Hollowfield? Was it mere folklore, or is there a grain of truth? Comment below with your theories, and don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling tales. And when it does, it will return, waiting for Hollowfield to forget again. The Scarecrow still walks. Sometimes I hear it, moving through the stalks, dragging something behind it. But I do know one thing. I don't know if I broke the cycle, or just postponed it. They don't speak to me anymore. Not in town, not even the sheriff. The fields went fallow this year. No harvest, no ceremony. When I looked back, Caleb was gone. It tilted its head once more, then turned, vanishing into the corn. The noise stopped instantly. The wind returned. The boy collapsed in my arms. But the Scarecrow stopped. The boy screamed. The crows shrieked. And I spoke. I remember. The Scarecrow was almost upon me now, but its gaze wasn't just on me. It looked through me, like it saw every year, every offering, every silence. They made me forget. I saw her face again, not scared, just confused, led by adults into the field, led by my parents. The other was my sister. A girl. Each generation offered a child, but in our year, they picked two, and the town allowed it. It wasn't just Micah, there was someone else. And suddenly, I remembered. The corn hissed, crows erupted from every direction, a wall of sound, movement. The Scarecrow stepped toward me. I lunged forward, grabbed the boy's arm, and the field screamed. But I couldn't. Caleb glanced at the Scarecrow and stepped aside. He expected me to do the same. The boy whimpered.
He was the first, for us. We didn't understand. We ran. But the Scarecrow let it happen anyway. He chose Micah.
And Micah? His expression faltered.
We all do. Once we're of age, we remember. That's the cost of staying, of thriving.
I stared at him, horror dawning like a second sunrise. You knew? I asked. He nodded.
It's balance, one life, every harvest. That's how Hollowfield survives.
He said.
It's not about cruelty.
It was Caleb. Older now, heavier, shadows under his eyes. He stepped forward slowly, hands open like he was calming an animal.
Don't interfere.
Before I could move, a sound cracked through the air, a voice behind me. It was Caleb's son. Beside it knelt a boy, small, blond. He looked up, wide-eyed, paralyzed. It towered, arms loose at its sides, head cocked, the same stitched mouth curled into a broken smile. Its eyes reflected the lantern light, glistening. In the center stood the Scarecrow, not hung, not mounted, but standing. Stalks closed around me, thicker than before, taller. They scraped my arms, whispering in rustling tones, and then declaring. I ran, lantern in hand, feet pounding the frost-hardened ground. The field swallowed me whole. Hi. Frantic, like it was caught in its throat. But then I heard it, a child's cry. I pressed my back against the wall, fists clenched. I wasn't going. I had done enough. Come and see, come and see. And from the cornfield, a voice, not shouting, not angry, just calling, soft, patient, low, like the hum of a lullaby spoken through a stitched mouth. I didn't sleep that night because I knew I would hear it. It began just after midnight, a sound like wind through dry leaves, though no trees were swaying, a rustling that moved with intention closer, always closer. Then came the crows, dozens of them, perched on the roof, the fence, the wires, silent, watching. I passed Sheriff McKinney outside the diner. He didn't speak, but he gave me a long, knowing look, then tossed something into the trash can. When he walked away, I checked it. A folded piece of paper. It read, "Tonight, the field chooses again. Stay inside. Pretend you don't hear it." The town was quiet that afternoon. Too quiet, like it was holding its breath again. I left the library shaking. The boy with the scratched-out face, his name was Micah, and I remembered him. I remembered watching him fall behind. I remembered the look on Caleb's face when we turned around and saw the figure, tall, outstretched, standing between us and the maze exit. I remembered hearing Micah's voice, calling for help, and none of us went back. Until now? And then, nothing, just blankness, like the memory had been buried or torn out. Not one of us, something deeper, something that didn't belong in a child's lungs. We ran all the way back to town. We were young, maybe 7, maybe 8, playing near the edge of the maze. It was after dark. We weren't supposed to be out. Caleb dared us to go inside. We laughed, pushed each other, then someone screamed. A memory stirred. Then I found something else, a photograph, faded and brittle, edges singed. 3 boys standing in front of the cornfield, wearing paper crowns. One of them was me, another was Caleb, the third I didn't recognize, but his face had been scratched out, deliberately, violently. Back in the archives, I dug deeper, found folders older than I'd expected, back to 1953, 1929, even one marked 1907, and in each, a single recurring page, handwritten, always the same sentence: a child was chosen. The yield must be balanced. I went back to the library that day. The librarian wasn't there. In fact, the whole building seemed abandoned. Still, I let myself in. I needed answers. At dawn, I returned to the field. No Scarecrow, no sign anyone or anything had been there. But as I turned to leave, something crunched under my boot. A crow's skull, picked clean, cracked right down the center. I ran back to the house, barred the door, stayed awake until light began to seep through the curtains. Not just the Scarecrow. The air felt different, the field quieter, as if the land itself had swallowed the figure whole. I stumbled back, tripped in the mud. When I looked up again, it was gone. The eyes were human, not glass, not buttons. They shimmered, wet and wide, like they were watching me. It wasn't burlap, not really. It looked like it had once been a face, but stretched, weathered, mouth stitched shut with black thread, and the eyes. I moved closer, each step louder than it should have been, each heartbeat like a drum in my chest, and then I saw it, the face. I couldn't stay inside. I lit a lantern and walked out into the yard. The field waited beyond the fence, silent, vast, infinite in the moonlight. And there, about 20 feet in, was the Scarecrow, same position, same tilt of the head, same impossible stillness. The house groaned that night. The old wood of the floorboards, the beams in the attic, all sighing under some unseen pressure. But it wasn't just the age of the place. It felt deliberate, rhythmic, as if the house itself were holding its breath. I walked out. The walls were closing in, the field watching, and the town complicit.
"Some debts ain't paid in money," he said, barely above a whisper. "Some are paid in silence."
I stood, jaw tight. Something happened to Caleb. Something this town covered up. McKinney's eyes narrowed.
"Some memories are fences. And fences are there for a reason."
He interrupted.
"You need to leave it be."
This is serious. I need.
"You're stirring up old things, son, things better left in the ground."
In the morning, I went to Sheriff McKinney, a stocky man with tired eyes and a voice that carried gravel. There was someone in the fields last night, I told him, tall, dressed like a scarecrow. Watching the house, he stared at me for a long time before speaking. I went back inside, locked the door, but I didn't sleep. I rose from bed, heart pounding. The cornfield swayed in the moonlight. Then I saw it. A figure standing motionless among the stalks, too tall, arms outstretched, head tilted at an unnatural angle. It looked like a scarecrow, but it wasn't there the day before. That night, the wind returned, stronger, more urgent. I locked every window, drew every curtain, but around midnight, I heard a sound, creak, 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 like something heavy shifting on a wooden post, like rope tightening. I walked home before sunset. The laughter from the corn maze followed me, but it no longer sounded like joy. It sounded like a mask stretched over something rotten. I opened my mouth to protest, to call it madness, but I didn't, because I remembered the town during harvest, the way everyone smiled too wide, the way parents held their children too tightly, like weighing their value, like hoping it wouldn't be their turn.
Same thing that happens every few decades. The field takes a child to keep the crop strong, to keep the sickness away, to keep us fed.
What happened to him? The man's face tightened.
Watched you and that boy. What was his name? Caleb. You two were thick as thieves. Until the last harvest.
I frowned. You knew me as a kid? He nodded.
Some things don't change, still the same as you were.
It was the same old man from the other night. Clouded eye, overalls. He leaned on a crooked walking stick, just watching. I replied. He chuckled, slow and low.
Going in.
I stood at the entrance, staring down the narrow, winding path cut between walls of corn. It looked innocent enough, but I remembered something, not a moment, not a memory, just a feeling, a scream muffled by husks, laughter turning to gasps, a scarecrow with human eyes. That evening, the maze opened. Kids raced through it, squealing with laughter, while their parents watched from hay bales and lawn chairs. It had been built at the edge of Hollowfield's largest cornfield, Maple Wayne Farm, but no one called it that anymore. Most just said the maze field, as if the field had become the maze, or the other way around. When I came up from the basement, the librarian was gone. Just the smell of old paper and the echo of my own footsteps. I stood frozen in that archive room for what felt like 10 minutes. Chosen, balanced? Was it a prank? Some forgotten town joke? But something inside me shifted, not fear. Not yet. Recognition. Like a puzzle piece I didn't know I'd lost had just fallen into place. The lights in the basement flickered as I walked between the narrow rows. Dust motes sparkled like spores. The air was heavier, and then I found it. A manila folder labeled Harvest Jubilee, 1994. I opened it. Inside, event schedules, voting sheets for the Scarecrow contest, booth arrangements. Everything looked normal, except there was no list of attendees, no names, just a single page stapled to the back. This year, a child was chosen. The yield must be balanced. No signature, no context, nothing more.
Festival records are kept in the archive room. Downstairs. Last cabinet on the left.
1994. That made her pause. She looked at me. Slowly.
Which year?
I tried to occupy myself, took a walk, had a stiff cup of black coffee at the diner. Though no one spoke a word to me this time, people looked through me, not with hostility, not even suspicion, more like they'd already written me off. I stopped at the library. A brick building across from the school. It was small, almost forgotten. The carpet smelled like mildew and cedar. An elderly librarian greeted me without lifting her eyes. "I'm looking for something on past harvest festivals," I said. "Still not looking up," she replied. By the time I walked home that evening, the sky was smeared with orange and purple. I stood at the edge of the field beside the house. The corn was so tall, it blocked the setting sun. Wind rushed through it in long, breathy sighs, and just as I turned to go, I heard it. A single creak, like wood and rope, like a new swing on an old post. The morning air had a bite to it, not cold exactly, but crisp, dry, the kind of air that smells like burnt leaves, like something turning, something decaying. The town was already alive by the time I stepped outside. Children running along the sidewalks with paper crowns made of red maple leaves, vendors wheeling carts down Main Street, and always that same music, a tinny, lilting melody that drifted from unseen speakers and made the hairs on my neck stand. It was the second day of the Autumn Jubilee. The maze would open at dusk. Then she turned and walked away.
Sometimes the field gives back. Most times, it keeps what it's owed.
She said, without looking at me. "Do you know who this is?" I asked, pointing to the blurred boy. She wiped her hands on her apron.
You shouldn't dig too deep.
I took the photo to the diner that afternoon. The waitress, a woman in her late 50s, took one glance and set the coffee pot down hard. The next morning, I found a box outside my door. Inside, an old photo album and a note. Figured these might help you remember. I flipped through the pages, pictures of me and Caleb, pumpkin patches, apple cider booths, but one photo stuck out, the Scarecrow contest, a line of straw figures dressed in flannel and burlap masks. We used to vote on them, give them names. People got weirdly into it. In the photo, I was smiling. Caleb beside me, but there was another kid standing slightly behind us. I didn't recognize him. His face was oddly blurred, like someone had smudged the ink with a wet thumb. The caption read, "Best Friends, Final Harvest 94." But I only remembered 2 of us. That night, I couldn't sleep, not from grief. Not exactly. Something else pressed in around the house. I kept the windows shut, but the breeze still found its way in, carrying the scent of damp leaves and dry husks. I dreamt of something tall moving between the stalks. It didn't run. It swayed.
It listens, you know. The field. Better to speak low after sundown.
Then he looked past me, toward the corn.
Everyone knows everyone here. Especially this time of year.
I didn't know what to say to that. "So you knew her?" He smiled, a tight-lipped, knowing grin.
She was one of the last who remembered how things were.
He nodded.
Shame.
The voice startled me. An old man stood under the lamplight by the bakery. He wore overalls and a checkered flannel shirt. One eye was clouded over, the other sharp as a nail. Yeah," I said. "Visiting. My Aunt Martha passed."
Back for the festival.
That night, I walked to the town square. The harvest banners were already up, orange and gold streamers. Hand-painted signs, the Hollowfield Autumn Jubilee, just like I remembered. It starts with a parade, then comes the feast, then the maze, then the... I paused. What came after the maze? I spent the afternoon unpacking my things, mostly in silence. The wind outside made the corn hiss and sway like restless sleepers. Every so often, I'd hear a crow caw, sharp, like a warning. There weren't many birds in Hollowfield, not anymore. I unlocked the old house with a key my aunt had mailed me the year before, just in case. She'd written in her note. That was all, not a word more. Inside, everything smelled like cedar and mothballs. Dust floated in the sunbeams like slow, lazy snow. Her cane was still propped by the door. Her tea mug, cracked and stained, still sat beside the sink. It was like she'd stepped out for groceries and never returned. The air smells different here, earthy, heavier. I parked just past the wooden sign that still reads, "Welcome to Hollowfield, where harvest feeds the soul." Some of the paint was flaking off the letters, like the town was trying to forget itself. As I drove down Main Street, I noticed how little had changed. Same red brick post office, same sagging diner with its plastic corn-on-the-cob mascot. But the people, they watched me. Not with hostility, with caution, like a stray dog wandered back into a yard where it once bit someone. My Aunt Martha died last month. Heart failure, they said. Peaceful, quiet. She was the only reason I had any tie left to Hollowfield. No wife, no kids. Just an aging house on the edge of town, half swallowed by golden cornfields and slowly losing its war against time. I hadn't set foot here since I was 11, that year. Something happened, but every time I try to recall it, my mind skips like a needle on a scratched record. I remember Caleb, my best friend back then. I remember the harvest festival, and then nothing. They say the corn grows taller in Hollowfield than anywhere else in the state. Something about the soil, dark as dried blood, thick as molasses after rain. But I never cared much for folklore. Not when I was a kid, not even now. As a grown man returning after 30 years to bury what little family I had left. Have you ever heard of a town where the harvest brings more than just crops? Welcome to Hollowfield, where legends walk among the cornfields. Before we delve into this eerie tale, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our chilling stories.